Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. It's a True Methods webinar sponsored by Auvik Networks. My name is Gary Pica, the president of True Methods, and this session is Picanomics, the new math of managed services. Before we get started and I introduce my co-host, I just want to do just a little bit of housekeeping. We won't be sending the slides for this, but we are recording the session so that everybody who is attending, you will get a link. And this is one of those sessions that has a lot of math in it. So it would be common that you would want to maybe watch this a second time because we're going to cover a lot of ground. Also, if you have any questions, you can just type them in to the GoToMeeting control panel in the questions pod, and we will be monitoring the questions as we go. So with that, we have a lot to cover. Do a brief introduction. I'd like to introduce my co-host, Alex Hoff, who is the Vice President of Product and Sales for Auvik Networks. Hey, Alex.
Hey there, Gary.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys, you coming on today and working together to help us, present this information. I did this presentation down at IT Nation last week, and it went over really well. So I even changed and added a couple things that came out of that session about the math. So, really what we want to do today is explain to people how to look at this business through a framework that will really change how they make decisions in order to, drive up their scale, their margins, those kind of things.
Absolutely. I was down at IT Nation as well, and it was a great show. So, yeah, I look forward to running through this with you.
So, today's really content. We're not going to be talking, a lot about True Methods and our software, my IT process, or Auvik and your products. We want to really just give value to people. But if people aren't familiar with Auvik and what you're doing, and we'll bring this up again at the end, and you'll talk for a few minutes about Auvik, but they should go to auvik.com/TRU, true, TRU5, and book a demo to see what you guys are doing. I mean, you've been working a lot with the True Methods members, and again, through this, we'll talk about a couple examples of how what you do fits in with the concepts we'll talk about today. And also, we have some special pricing on our product, My IT Process. They can email gary.promo@truemethods.com. So with that, let's start off with this question that I want to ask everybody. What if you're an owner of an MSP, what if 25% of your total annual revenue was in the bank at the end of the year, after you paid all of your expenses and you took a true owner salary? What would that mean to you and your life? And that means if you're a $2 million business, that would be $500,000 after owner salary. What most people say, because I asked this question in all my live, sessions last week, is it would change their life, their team, a lot of things. And Alex, this is what the very top companies, the top 15% or so of companies are doing today in this marketplace as MSPs. In fact, some of the stats that I heard at IT Nation, the top 25% of IT providers, MSPs, after owner compensation, true owner compensation, are at about 18% profit. But here's the thing, the mean is only about 8%, and the bottom 25% actually lose money if they took a full owner's salary. So if you think about that for a second, that's a huge performance gap, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what we want to do today is I want to bring up this concept. We talk about margins a lot, but I want to talk about leverage. And this is a concept that we use in the True Methods training program to really show that the right service delivery structure creates efficiency, and efficiency can create profit, but the way we measure it is through leverage. And this is the relationship between the number of people that you have working at an IT provider and the amount of total service revenue you generate, whether it's recurring or non-recurring, but just services, not product, not like cloud resale. It's just services, service revenue. So if you look at this example, an average MSP that has 10 employees, they do about $1 million of just services a year. So if we divide that, that means their leverage is 100,000. So they generate about $100,000 of annual service revenue per total employee. That's everybody, not just techs, including the owner if you work in it. Those top companies generate 50% more service revenue based on the number of employees. So they're generating at least $150,000 or more. So that little MSP with 10 employees has $500,000 of unrealized profitability that's stuck in their business. And what we're going to do today is go through a process that I call Picanomics. There's both macro Picanomics and micro to show you a framework where you can look and find out if you have a gap, why you have that gap. I like to call it finding the hole in the bucket. So here's what we're going to do. The macro piece is we're going to put all of your service delivery people into defined roles. Then we're going to relate those roles to top line revenue. So that's going to create a relationship between each role and how much revenue it touches. And then we'll look at what the levers are for each delivery area. And then once we do that, we'll take that same concept and we're going to apply it to your average cost per seat. And we're going to look at what your average cost per seat is versus what your average sale price or all-in seat price is to determine really where you are with gross margins in the business and leverage. And then we're going to highlight 3 central numbers that if you understand them are the only 3 numbers you need to get from that average of 8 to 12% after owner's salary up above 20-25%. And Alex, I've done this twice. So my first MSP that I scaled to 7,000 endpoints, we actually ran it over 30% net profit. And the current MSP that I invest in here in the Philadelphia market, we are already in that 20% range and climbing. So, above the average of that top 25%. And what I'm going to talk about in the next, 55 minutes, this is exactly how I've gotten there a couple times and helped other people. So I love math, and being a top company, getting over 20 or 25% net profit is a math problem. It's a beautiful and simple, not easy to implement because this is a hard business that we're in, but the math is relatively simple the way we're going to lay it out today. But our industry tends to make it complex. You have balance sheets and income statements and labor loaded gross margins and service level agreements, return on assets, EBITDA. We have all these things. In fact, I was in an awesome peer group for a number of years, and we had this giant sheet that had all these numbers on them, just pages of large format paper, and I learned a lot. It was a great thing. But the couple numbers that I needed, the 3 numbers that I eventually figured out that allowed me to have profit margins higher than almost everybody in the group, they weren't on this sheet. And that's where I want to start today, is not with the complexity. I want to start with the simplicity. And here's the 3 numbers. And I'm going to, one of them I'm going to need to explain in a little bit, but I'll give you the concept of it, and you're going to see how they come up over and over again in our math. The first one is average all-in seat price, AISP, all-in seat price. And what this is, Alex, is if you take all of your recurring revenue for your managed services and you divide it by the total number of seats under management, that gives you your average price per seat. And this is super important because it tells a lot about your company. It tells a lot about your margins, because we're going to talk about what your real cost per seat is today. But it also determines your value. And Alex, one thing that I always tell people is they use a lot of CSAT scores to see how happy their customers are. But those CSAT scores doesn't tell you how valuable you are to your customers. The price you command is more of an indicator of your value than your CSAT score. Does that make sense?
Definitely. You don't want to compete on price.
Yeah, exactly. That means that you maybe have a value gap. They can't tell the difference between your value and others. And we're going to talk about why that is. And that's part of the math problem. So average price is the first one. The second one is average MRR, average monthly recurring revenue. This is your average deal size. So if you take all of your recurring revenue, divided by the number of clients that make that up, that's a really important number that determines your scalability and profitability. And the last one is a True Methods term that we teach in our training program we call REM. It's reactive hours per end user per month. And basically, I'm going to explain this and show you the math, but basically, it takes all of the support tickets and alerts that you do as part of your monthly fee. And we look at that time relative to the amount of end users that you manage, because that gives us a unit of measure that you can compare yourself against and compare against other people, regardless of whether they manage 500 endpoints or seats or whether they manage 2,000. So, and it's a really important number. We're going to show you how it impacts your business in so many ways. In fact, it's probably the leading indicator of success in our business, and most people don't track it. So you want higher profit margins, but you drive leverage. So you want more revenue per employee. Then you need to relate each role or roles, because if you're small, someone might be in more than one role, and then relate that role to revenue, and then understand the leverage factors that are involved in each one. So what are the items that determine how much revenue one person in every service delivers? And those levers are the ones you focus on. And I'll give you a hint. They refer back to the three numbers, obviously, that we talked about as the keys. And if you focus on increasing those leverage points, then you can increase the amount of, you can understand what you have to do to prioritize generating more service revenue with the fewest amount of people. And that's the name of the game. I don't think anybody's looking to generate more revenue with more people, at least I hope not. Okay, so we break this business down into, some people have 4. I'm going to explain that we have 5, and one of those delivery areas I'll have to explain in a little bit, but here's what they are. First is professional services. This is the billable stuff. So all the stuff that we do that we charge our customers for, we upgrade people, we move them to the cloud, we do that kind of work. The stuff that we've been doing since the beginning of time is professional services. So that'll match up with non-recurring revenue. The next 4, whether you have 3 or 4 of them, these are the things that we're bundling into our monthly fee. So the first one is centralized services. The heart of this is for most people, it's their automation, it's their RMM, followed by expanding tool sets, of which Auvik, you guys are really one now as things start to move to the cloud with your network monitoring, really pretty closely aligned, wouldn't you say, like with the RMM, like you're side by side with that in terms of the center of automation.
Yeah, it's automating the tasks on the network side, which we view ourselves as complementary to the overall solution stack.
Yeah, and so and the growing piece of it, right? So more stuff is moving from on-prem, it's moving to hybrid models. Most of our customers are hybrid models so again, that piece of it is really important. So that thing, the monitoring, the automation around networks, internal as well as external networks is the heart of it. But like things like remote backup, everybody has, that's centralized, and security. Additional cloud services. So everyone's adding to a whole bunch of, like, you were at the IT Nation, you went through the solutions pavilion. There's a bunch of centralized services. This is a growing area. So that's all that stuff that's centralized. Next is one that not everybody has, and this is kind of the secret sauce, and I'm going to explain this role in a little bit after I explain the math, that I call technology alignment. So in my businesses and what we teach in True Methods, we have a dedicated role of people that really are working. They manage a number of clients of the keepers of our technology standards and continually aligning each customer against standards so that we can keep them in alignment, because a greater level of alignment is going to reduce their risk, reduce their issues, and it's going to increase our value and margins. The generic term is VCIO, but this would be the technology consulting, the business relationship with the customer, and finally support when something breaks or someone needs something. So you should be able to put all of your people, if you're listening, into one of these areas. There shouldn't really be a 6 service delivery area. Everybody should be able to fit into one of these. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to each of those and say, okay, based on that role, how much revenue should they touch? How much revenue each month should a professional services person be able to bill? For centralized services and technology alignment, VCO and support, how much recurring revenue should each of those be able to manage? And for each of those roles, because the bottom 4, they all are costs against the same recurring revenue, because this is how we deliver our value. So what I'm going to do, Alex, is we're going to go through each of these. We'll start with professional services because that's non-recurring services and it's easy and everybody understands it. And then we'll go through centralized services and the rest, and we'll finish with support, which is the most complicated but the most important one. Does, does that sound like a good plan?
Definitely.
So professional services, like this is simple. I said one professional services person for every $20,000 a month of non-recurring service. And the levers are just utilization and hourly rate. So how many hours do you bill and how much do you charge for those hours? Whether you do it flat fee or you bill per hour, either way, right? The concept is the same. So here's two examples. Company A has an hourly rate of 125 and their billing utilization, they bill about 85% each month of their available hours. So that means they would bill $17,000 a month per each resource. Company B has an hourly rate of $150 an hour and they have a 90% utilization rate. They would bill $22,000. So you can see the difference between it and what's affected. Pretty simple. If you can charge more, have a higher hourly rate, keep your people more utilized, they're really the only two things you can do to affect that leverage number. And Alex, you can work backwards for this. So if I say a ballpark should be 20,000, one easy little gut check people can do is, like, on average, how much non-recurring services does your business do? And how many people do you have in that role? And what I find is a lot of times someone's doing 25,000 a month of recurring revenue or 30,000 a month, and they have 3 people that are in professional services. So what I usually say to them there is, so you're out of alignment. There's one of two things. Either your people are just real inefficient. They're not billing their hours properly. They're not organized properly, or they're not really professional services. So they're doing escalations and tickets and things that aren't billable, that are included in your monthly service. It's really just reactive time that you're hiding there. Are you with me on that?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a common place people hide. So, but so it's good to do that little gut check on that. So let's go on to centralized services, and the first one's the easiest. It's I mean, this one of the 3 we're going to talk about, because if you look at it the way that I do, which is in our training, we say the centralized services person or NOC person really just manages the tools and pushes things out centrally. They're not actually doing tickets and alerts. We consider that support. We send those over to support. So if you think about it in that way, this is where, as you scale, your margins go up, because one person, you might have a part-time person if you have 500 endpoints, but even when we had 7,000 endpoints, I still only had really 1.5 people, about one person in this role. And the reason is, your RMM or Auvik doesn't care how many endpoints you're managing. Do you know what I mean? Once they're set up properly, it's going to manage and automate them in a many-to-one scenario, right? So you'll get a lot of scale here, right?
Definitely. It's all about automation and leverage, right? So just get the tools to do what you want, and then you can focus on the value creation.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then you got to consider tool costs, but that's the micro math. That doesn't enter into how much revenue someone can touch. That's going to enter into our cost. So we'll address that when we get to the micro side. Next, we go on to technology alignment. And as I said, this is my secret sauce. This is how I was able to scale my businesses and teach, this framework, and this is the center of it. It powers about 20% of the MSP Mentor 501 have used this role in this framework to get to the top of our industry. And basically, this role, I'll explain exactly in a few minutes what it does, but it is 100% dedicated, proactive role of aligning customers' technology with your standards. And one of these people can touch about $60,000 of monthly recurring revenue. So at my MSP, we have about a little under 240,000 a month today recurring revenue. So we have 4 of these people in our business. And the levers are the amount of accounts they can manage and the average MRR. So there's one of our 3 smart numbers that comes up. So company A, you have an average deal size of 2,000 a month, and they can manage 20 accounts, which 18 to 20 accounts is about what they manage. So they can only touch $40,000 per technology alignment manager. Company B has an average MRR of 3,500. They can manage the same 20 accounts. It doesn't take it doesn't take twice as many people to manage, whether they have 2,000 or 3,000 a month. So the time is about the same. So now that same person can touch 70,000 a month of recurring revenue. So that shows you how important that average MRR size is. it affects other things in your business too, as we're going to talk about, because as we go on to virtual CIO, it's the same levers. And we need VCIOs to touch a lot of revenue. So we want one virtual CIO, because they're the hardest people to find and train. And other than maybe your top professional services like big gun, they're usually the most expensive people in the building, because they have, business acumen as well as some technical background. So we need them to touch a lot of revenue. So again, if your average deal size is only $2,000 a month, and you can manage 40 accounts, which is what they should be able to manage, they can only touch 80,000 a month. But if your average deal size or average MRR is 3,500, they can touch 140. So you see in some of these areas, the costs are based on how many accounts, not how many endpoints. And so your average MRR is a huge driver in your scalability and profitability. So you need to choose your clients wisely, and you need to set some minimum MRR at which you will not sell below. Because as these leverage numbers come down, what happens is, because these are proactive roles, when that revenue comes down, you end up putting all of your team towards more percentage of reactive stuff, and your value comes down. So let's zoom out before we get to support and think about this. Of everything we've talked about so far, each of these leverage relationships are fixed. And here's what I mean by that. Professional services, you set your hourly rate, and as long as you have some backlog of work to do, we know each month how much we're going to bill. Like, at my MSP, I get a report that's pretty accurate before the month starts, based on how many days are billable that day, whether we have any vacations, what our total hours are, what our backlog is. I know what we're going to bill in professional services before the month start. It's fixed. We control everything. And same with the next three. We know centralized services, how much recurring revenue we have. That's what we're going to have no matter what happens. With technology alignment in the VCIO, I know for each one of my people in that role, I know how many clients they have times the amount of average MRR. I know how much revenue. I know what their leverage is going to be. Like, nothing's going to happen in the month that's going to change it. They're all fixed. And that's what we want. We want as many things in our model fixed. But the last one is variable, because it's not only based on our price, but it's based on how much reactive time we generate. Because the more time we have, the more resources we put on that, the higher our costs will be. And the variance of what people see in this area is huge. So we're saying one support desk resource should be able to touch $60,000 of MRR. So if you have $100,000 of MRR, you should only have a couple people in your support desk. And these levers, and we're going to show you why when we get to the micro math, why you need to get to that point if you want to thrive in this business. So the leverage are your seat price. Obviously, the higher your price, all things being equal, the more revenue you'll have per person. And then it goes by how many endpoints each tech can manage, but that's really determined by something that we call REM. And REM is reactive hours per end user per month. And so this is how you calculate it. You take the total time entered on all your reactive tickets and alerts. So just total all that time for basically all the stuff you're doing under your monthly fee that you're not billing for, okay, by these areas. And divide that by the total end users under support. And what you get is your reactive hours per endpoint per month. And to give you idea, and I'll give you examples of the numbers because I think this makes it more real. So these are 4 companies, A, B, C, and D, that all have 1,000 end users under support, which is a common, a lot of people are in that area, so I think it'll make sense to a lot of people. The first company has an hour of reactive of REM. If you have an hour of REM, you would need, in 1,000 end users under support, you would need a little over 6 people working 100% efficiency to complete all those tickets and all the time on them, okay? Company B has 30 minutes of REM. They only need 3 people. Company C, less than 2. They're down to 15 minutes of REM. And if you think about this, Alex, it works the opposite way. If you have 1,000 endpoints and you have, 5 or 6 people on your support desk, then that means your REM is an hour. It works the opposite way too. But here's what happens with leverage. When you add a seat price to this, it determines your leverage. So company A with an hour REM They have to add another support desk resource every time they add $16,000 of new MRR. Company B can wait till they add 40,000 before they need a resource. Company C can add 90,000 a month of recurring revenue. So do you see how small amounts, Alex, of REM, like we're talking about, 15 and 30-minute changes, look at how massive it impacts your leverage. Like that's crazy, right?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. I said definitely. I totally agree with this.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it's really hard to compete. If you're company A and you have to add someone just a support desk, and then think about how you scale. I mean, think of it this way. My MSP, the first one, when it fully matured, we were like company D. We had under 8 minutes of REM. So we had 7,000 endpoints under management and only 1,400 tickets a month. Okay. If we were an average company, that we would have had 7,000 tickets a month, we never would have got to 7,000 because we would have drowned in tickets. You just you can't add someone every, 15, 20 or 25,000 a month of recurring revenue. You can't keep adding people to support, or else you have so many tickets and noise, you get buried. So here's another way we're going to look at it that more recently I've been using, and then we're going to circle back to this, and I'm going to come back to this example during our micro math. We look at cost per seat, and I'm going to make a different point on it. But if your REM is an hour, so if you're that person who has 1,000 end users and you have 5 or 6 people on support, that means that your cost per seat is around $32 just for support. That doesn't count centralized services, labor, or tools. It doesn't count technology alignment, doesn't count VCIO or account management. It doesn't count any of those things. They're all going to add to your cost per seat. Company B has half that cost per seat for support, and company C half again. And this number, and we're going to give people a gut check where you can kind of figure out what your cost per seat is, why you're on this webinar today for support. Then I'm going to tell you how much that tells you about your business and what you need to do. So the bad thing, Alex, if you're company A and you have REM of an hour, most people don't know it. And so they don't have 6 people on their support desk. Even though they have 6 people's worth of work to do, they have 4 people on their support desk. So you know what happens? The noise permeates. So everyone starts doing tickets. Your professional service people, instead of billing 20,000 each, they're only billing, 15 or 12,000. You know why? Because they're doing escalations from the support desk, because we have 6 people's worth of tickets and we only have 4 resources. Your VCIOs become account managers. They're doing it. You're sending things back over to the NOC. Everyone's doing tickets, okay? You're in the ticket business, and that's what happens when you have that many tickets and that much noise. So here's our concept that I want to talk about, and then we'll get to the micro math. These are the 4 service delivery areas that most people we meet have. They just have professional services, support, the centralized services, and VCIO. If they're doing a good job with it, I actually call it VCO, virtual Captain Obvious. They're just giving basic information like your server is old, you should replace it, or your licensing expired, you should renew it. So the question here, assuming you have centralized services dialed in, right? And more people do. They're using, one of the top RMMs, and those things have really matured. They're working with companies like Auvik. They have the right security software in place. Like once you have that dialed in and you get those benefits, if you don't, that's a huge opportunity to lower your reactive noise. But normally when people get to that, that's what gets them like under an hour of REM, gets them into that 45 to 30 minutes. But how do you get it lower? And this is where we bring in this concept of technology alignment, or what I call your superpower, which is when I started to figure out this math early in my business, and I said, if we don't lower our cost per seat for support, if we don't lower the number of reactive tickets and the time we spend on them, we're not going to be able to scale, because our noise is going to get to the point where we get stuck. And that's what happens. People between $75,000 and $150,000 a month of recurring revenue, I call that the impact zone. They get into that impact zone and they stay there for years. It's where MSPs go to die. It's because their noise levels finally got to the point where they outran their revenue and their staff. So I said, let's focus someone whose only job is to deal with that. So what our superpower or our technology alignment role is they manage those 20 accounts. Our whole entire company's built standards. And Alex, the way we build standards is we look at our tickets and alerts and we see where are things, where is the noise being created, and then we build standards to eliminate that noise, right? So the two levers you have to lower noise are automation and standards. So we build the standards template. We do it, it's hundreds and hundreds of questions, all yes, no, so we know whether they're in or out of our standards. And then we're doing a piece of that, like on average once a month. We're on site, usually for a full day, comparing clients against standards. That's the technical alignment process. And then once that's complete, that alignment information goes to the VCIO, who can learn about the customer's business, and they can give them the business impact of what's out of alignment, right? So let me give you an example of what that might look like. Let's just say you had a server and we told the customer, listen, this is out of alignment. Your server is 5 years old. And so if it was to go down based on its age and it's the way that it's configured and the way we're able to back it up because of it, you're going to be down for 2 to 3 business days. Now, the customer might say, that's okay. That's not a server that we can, that's a server that we can live without for a couple days without having a major impact on our business. Fine. Or they might say, wait a minute, that's a line of business app. We can't be down for more than 4 to 5 hours. In which case you can say, well, would you like to change your expectations or your technology? So we're basing this business relationship on the technical alignment process. And that's what's going to make people invest. And here's one way you can know whether you're a VCIO or a virtual captain obvious. With our members, Alex, we track the percentage of non-recurring services per month from our managed service base relative to every dollar of MRR. So you should be generating 25 to 35% at least in non-recurring services for every dollar. So if you do $100,000 a month of recurring revenue, the non-recurring project work or professional services just to that base should be 25 to 35,000 a month. If you're only doing 10 to 15 today, then your clients don't understand the impact of where they're out of alignment. Does that concept make sense to you, Alex?
It resonates really well with what we see on the network in terms of standardization. So for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so it applies to every aspect, and you guys see it. So you're tracking those things, and you see the amount of issues people have, and a lot of them is not just with equipment, but it's with the core configuration of technology, and that's the way it works. And we do this continuously, because every firewall is secure the day you set it up. Every backup, it works the day it's installed, but it doesn't work later because things go out of alignment immediately over time based on environmental changes. So if you think about it, these 3 numbers, right, are the ones you want to look at: your average All-in-C price, your average MRR, and if you can get to it, your REM. And I'm going to give you a little, like I said, a little gut check, a little cheat sheet on that, so that you can come up with a ballpark on it today, right on this webinar, so that you can gauge where you are. Then you put people into the delivery areas, and we use this process of alignment and business impact, which is the technology alignment and VCIO roles, to drive up professional services, because that money goes right to our bottom line. Assuming we have capacity, we can keep those people more billable, and it reduces that REM and raises our value and support. So that's kind of the framework for the macro side of Picanomics. So a recap on that is, based on your recurring revenue and your non-recurring revenue, match those roles, and then compare targets against where you are today and ask, am I out of alignment because we're inefficient, or do I maybe have some capacity there that I could use? This is a little sheet we use in our training program where people can put down what their recurring and non-recurring is today. And then they put how many people they have in each of these roles. And then based on those numbers, how many should you have in those roles? So maybe you have 5 people in support, and our leverage numbers say you should have 3. Okay, go figure out why. It's probably because your REM is high. Go figure out why, and then set a goal. Like, how much revenue do you want to have in 24 months? And then how many people do you want to have in those roles to get in alignment? So you can kind of set goals around each of these areas, and that will keep you focused on the metrics that drive leverage up. So to summarize everything we've talked about so far before we get onto the micro math, use the macro view to evaluate your service delivery. Identify capacity or more likely inefficiency by each area to see where your problem is, where you're leaking. And then you'll uncover the revenue impact, like how much of it is just your price compared to these other things. Now we're going to combine that with a micro view to get a complete picture. And these projections create a framework for how you can make decisions. So I want to answer one question before we go on that's been sitting here. It says, I'm assuming that target of NRR numbers is based on the employee's salary. If the ProServe consultant is making 80, that will be different than someone making 150. No, Nick, not for leverage. So your leverage number, it doesn't matter how much people make. That affects your profit margins, how much money you make. But in terms of how much revenue one professional service person should touch, that's just based on, how many hours do they have to bill and what's your hourly rate. That determines how much they bill in a month. What you pay them determines your profit margins, but that's separate from leverage. Alex, am I being clear on that, the difference?
Yes, I think so. I think it all, you got to put it all together though at the end, and I think that's where you're going with the microeconomics.
Exactly. And the business is all about averages. So, if you increase your leverage, how much you pay each employee is not quite as important. Like that's where we started in the old days, Alex. People used to have a 3X model where they took each person times 3 times their salary, and that's how much you wanted to bill. But it's just not so simple anymore because we have all these roles that people are working and we're paying that all roll up to that monthly fee. And that's why we have to figure our leverage and our costs based on each role so that we know what the new metrics are to drive it up. And small changes in increasing your overall leverage have a massive impact on your profitability. They have way more impact than whether you pay your average tech an extra $3,000 or $5,000 compared to somebody. Okay, so let's go on to micro Picanomics. Let me give you the concept, and then we're going to dive into this deeper and deeper. So the way you want to figure out, everyone needs to know what their average cost per seat is, and almost no one does, Alex. I asked this question in front of a room of hundreds of people last week. And how many people can tell me their average cost per seat and how they calculated it? And some people's hands go up and I'm like, they don't work with True Methods. No hands went up in one room. Okay. No hands. And I'm like, well, that's like saying you're selling a firewall, but you don't know how much you paid for it. That would be silly, right? Like we're selling a monthly fee. We have to have a unit of measure, which is our seat cost. And then we have to use that same common denominator or we're not going to be able to understand what our margins are. And people don't. That's why the bottom 25%, the mean is 8%. This is the reason why. So what we're going to do is if we go into each area and say, what's our labor cost for support? What are labor and tools for centralized services? What's our labor cost based on those macro and micro numbers? Then we can figure out what an average cost per seat is for each area, and we can come up with a legitimate cost per seat, and we can make better decisions. So let's start with support. This is the big one, okay, and the one that varies the most. So really, your REM, okay, which is the amount of time you're spending per endpoint, determines how many seats someone can manage. And those number of seats times your average cost per each employee, what your average of one support desk resource, that gives you your cost per seat. In this case, this person has low REM. It's about 15 minutes. 0.25 is 15 minutes REM. So their support cost is only $8.75. So we're going to show you what happens when your REM is higher and what that does to support cost. Next is centralized services. So let's say you have one person in that role that costs $5,600. They manage 1,000 seats, and you have $12,000 a month with all your tools combined. So your cost for labor would be $5.60 average, and your cost per tools would be $12 per seat per month. Alex, are you with me on this logic so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, real simple. We know what our tool costs are. We know what our seats are. Now, you may say, look, I only manage 800, but I have enough tools. All of my tools could manage 1,000. Then use 1,000. If you have some open licenses, you can use 1,000 for that to get an average. Because remember, this is all about averages. Next, we go on the network administration. Really simple. How much do you pay an average? This is the technology success piece, and generically we call it network administrator. So for technology success, we pay people on average $5,800 a month. They manage 18 clients. Our average client has 35 seats. So that's 630 seats managed. We divide that by the 5,800. It costs us about $9 for net admin. Same thing for VCIO. They'd say they manage 36 clients, the same average of 35. We do the math, $6 per seat for VCIO. That's our cost. So we add all those up, and there you see we're at $42 a seat. So the question is, and I don't think anybody listening today, I work with 1,000 MSPs. No one listening probably has a cost less than $40 a seat, Alex. If they think they do, they're probably not capturing 100% of their costs. And they need to go back and look at it. So here's what happens. Your cost is $42. And let's say we want to target 70 or 72% gross margin. So if my cost is $42 a seat, what does my average sale price have to be? It needs to be $150 per seat. That needs to be, that's it. That's where we need to be. We need to be at $150 a seat to have $108 of gross margin. That's 72%. So here's what you can assume, Alex. If you assume that I'm correct, that your cost is at least $40 or more, and your seat price average today is less than $150, we can make an assumption that your margins are lower, right?
Simple math.
Yeah, it's simple math. Your margins are lower. So now I'm going to give everybody a little, like, the big one that varies the most is support. So I'm going to give everybody a simple gut check that they can do to check what their cost is just for support, not their total cost per seat, but their cost for support. So take the number of people you have in support. So let's say you have 3 people that are in support. Then add other people that also work on non-billable tickets. So you may say, well, I have a knock person and 25% of their time is spent on tickets. And I have our project people and probably 25% of their time is spent on tickets. Okay, then you really have 3.5 people. So like ballpark it that way, the number of people in support, and then ballpark what percentage of other people's time. Then multiply that by the average monthly cost of a support desk resource. So if you take, 4 people and you multiply it by, 5,000 a month, you get 20,000 as your support cost. Then if you divide that by your current numbers of seats under management, you get your cost for support per seat. So I'm going to say if your support cost per seat is greater than $10, you have a value issue, which is also probably a sales issue and a profitability issue. So here's the example. Let me do the math for you. If you have 1,000 seats that you manage and you have 4 support desk resources, your cost is around $20 a seat just for support. So support is a low value or negative value item. Centralized services, technology alignment, and VCIO are high value components. So here's how we bring this all together, Alex. If you have cost of $45 a seat at 70% gross margin, there's your $150 a seat. So I use 42 actually as the example here. So both company A and company B, if they want to charge that value, they both have $42 a seat to spend. But company A has higher REM, so they have an $18 cost just for support, which means they only have $24 available for those high value roles. Company B has lower noise, so their costs are lower. They only have $8 of support costs, so they have $34 to spend. Now think about that for a second. Look at that as a percentage. They have like a third more of cost that they can invest in technology success, technology alignment, high value tools like Auvik, okay, that are going to lower their noise even more, VCIO, so that so what happens in real life, in the real world, here's how this translates, because I know these numbers for people. The person who has the lower support cost at $42, they can actually command $150 and they get their margin. The people that are at $42, but they have $10 more of support cost, their value is lower. So they end up only getting $150 $125 or $100 per seat because of their lower value. So their margins are 67, 58. And most people I see are in the 50s with managed services. You're going to get stuck in the 50s. You got to get into the 70% gross margin range. Are you with me on this?
Same way we run our business, so I totally get it.
Yeah, you guys look at it the same way. And so that simple gut check that we gave you is an indicator. Use that. Be honest with yourself, not just on how many people you have in support, but how many other people are doing tickets you're not billing for, and add those to that number of support people, and get your cost per month based on those people, divide it by your number of seats, and if your answer is more than $10, instead of spending money on marketing and sales boot camps and all these things, trust me, your value is too low. And this is the reason why in every marketplace, even here in Philadelphia, where I've built 2 top MSPs, I meet people that say, well, we can't command that price. Like customers won't pay that price. And what I try to tell them is, no, not at your noise levels, because your value is not high enough. But if you had the right value, people are paying these prices. And I work with people in almost every marketplace. We have people that are commanding those prices and people that are telling us it can't be done. So start with the macro view. And this is a framework on how to align people with top line revenue. And then the micro view, which is calculating that cost per seat, that provides detailed understanding of your gross margin. And then these smart numbers, we have 20 of them we track, but these 3, like understanding your all-in seat price, your average MRR, and your REM. If you can't track REM today, you can just use our little gut check. It gets you to the same place of figuring out what your costs for support are real world today. Everyone can do that. And then once you have that figured out, now you can see where you are compared. Am I more than $10 today? How much more am I? And how much of a problem? Because until you get that number down in that range, you're going to have a value problem and you're going to have a sales problem. All right. I got a couple more things I want to summarize with, but we have a couple questions here. It says, how are the macro numbers used as an MSP is building up, where we don't have specific roles filled with 100% dedicated rather than people play several roles? Okay, Jeff, that's a great question. And in that case, what you can do is this. If you think about how we looked at that, we based it on how many people, like let's take VCIO. We based on how many accounts they will be able to manage if they were full-time. Okay, so for our cost per seat, we use that. And the same thing with leverage. So if you have somebody in at half-time, if they were full-time, what would those numbers be? So if you go back through this video and you look at the assumptions that we made, you can make the assumptions on where you're going to be when those roles are full-time. And your numbers, both macro and micro, will be accurate. So Alex, do you understand my concept? This is based on what a full-time role could do?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so it makes it a little easier that way. It said, how would someone make these if they were a startup without significant data? What I would tell you, Zach, is, again, go back through this webinar. What I tell people in our training program when we give these examples, make some assumptions that you're going to fall in line with our examples. Okay, so assume that like this data is based on the fact that we work with 1,000 people around the world, that this is where top companies come in around here. Then just make sure as you go to market that your average MRR and your average all-in seat price are going to be in those ranges. They're the things you can control. So if you do that, you'll be on the fairway until you have enough data to start to get to the point where you nail it down. It says, do we factor in non-technical service roles like finance, for example? No, Jeff, all we're going to focus on, here's the good thing about this business, Alex. Most of our people are service delivery. So our cost of sales, administration, finance, relatively speaking, compared to other businesses, is pretty small compared to our revenue. So I'm confident in telling you, if you drive your service leverage up, your margins will go up. And those things will fall in line. So if you get your gross margins up, 100% of the time your net margins fall behind. And adding all those things into the costing just creates a lot more complexity, and complexity usually equals worse results. One more question. Ryan says, as for your all-in seat price, are you factoring in network infrastructure, servers, workstations, essentially everything? How does your model vary if you aren't doing workstations? So Ryan, I'll answer that. That's a longer question, so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. So we have accounts where some accounts, first off, the answer is yes. It goes by managing everything. And we have some accounts where, well, let me put it this way. We always manage everything. The only thing we don't do, maybe have some bigger clients that have their own support people. So our cost in our micro Picanomics for reactive support is lower. That lowers. So our seat price might be a little bit less, but also our costs are a little less. And that's why the macro Picanomics guide is so great, because you can look at a deal like that and say, hey, I'm still going to have VCIO. I still have to install my tools where I can impact their result. And I'm still going to have my technology alignment. Those costs are going to stay the same. The only cost that's going to come down is going to be my support cost if they're doing their first level support. So what does that look like? And then use your margins again, and you can figure out, you might be able to say, well, instead of being at, 150 a seat, I can be at 120 or 110, and I'm going to have the same gross margin. Yeah. Is that too complicated, Alex, or are you following my basic logic on that?
Well, I think it makes sense. Like, again, it's like, what's your value, and how do you work backwards to dictate your price given your costs or effectively your gross margin? So yeah, you got to just figure it out.
Yeah, and so here's what happens. People go take those, like they call them infrastructure only deals, and they don't really know their cost. They're trying to come up with a cost per server. You don't know your cost per server. I can tell you that you don't, okay? You're guessing at it. And so if you don't have a structure, like a framework like we're talking about, you're not capturing 100% of your costs for that account. And so people go in at $50 a seat saying, well, I don't have support. It'll just be $50 a seat. But their costs, are still in the 30s, and they have really low gross margin, and they don't understand why, because they're looking at their sheet coming out of all their ticketing, and it's showing that every account has high gross margin, 60%, 70%, 80% gross margin. But then when you look at their financials, they're in the 50s. So where's the gap? And this is where the gap is. They don't have a framework to capture all their costs. So MSP efficiency. The average MSP spends too much time and energy to get mediocre results. They create a long road. So if you can focus on your value proposition, and again, raising value means lowering your cost for support. So would you rather own a $3,000 MSP, or would you rather own a $1.2 million revenue in MSP? And the answer is, if you had no other data, you'd have the bigger company. But if one was more efficient, and one ran at 25% compared to 10, and they both made the same amount of money, you'd rather have the smaller MSP and scale it up to 3 million at 25%. And so this kind of sums it up, okay? At $150 a seat, these both are 1,000 seats under management. The top MSP generates $150,000 a month in recurring revenue, and the bottom one generates 100. There's that same 50,000 a month, or a little over $500,000 a year we keep coming back to. That's inside the difference between the bottom quartile and the very top people in this business. And the math we gave today, and understanding how to drive down noise and drive up value, is the center of it. Because at any revenue level, you want the fewest amount of clients, assuming that none are more than like 5 to 8% of your revenue, the fewest number of endpoints managed, the fewest number of reactive tickets, and the fewest employees. This is how you have to start gauging yourself moving forward. So we got about 5 minutes left. With that, maybe could you just take a minute, and people wanted this website again. It's auvik.com/true5 for a demo. But can you give us just a brief kind of high level of why so many people are engaging with Auvik right now, because it's one of the hottest things going?
Definitely. So love all the math, have a math degree as a background. So I like to see the analytic approach to the way you work with MSPs. Yeah, very high level. We consider Auvik a network infrastructure RMM. What we mean by that is we focus on switch, router, firewall, the other infrastructure that the traditional RMM doesn't focus on. RMMs are great at PC and server management. Like, don't get me wrong, that is their core competency. But when it comes to the network, I'll tie it back to something you said. You need to drive your REM down. How do you do that? You get visibility. you automate best practices, you reduce the amount of tickets you're getting from your clients that involve you escalating to your most senior resources. So how many of the people on this call have got a call from a client asking, hey, my network is slow or it's not working? Like, that's an annoying question that if you could troubleshoot faster, or better yet, avoid, you're going to drive that efficiency and leverage that Gary's talking about. So, we work with MSPs to help them take a handle of the network, standardize that network, identify gaps in terms of compliance. Most of our most successful partners are ones that look to standardization. You don't want to have 15 vendors that you're managing, because that means your team has to be able to know how to work with those 15 different vendors. Like, I lovingly joke that Windows is easy because there's only like 7 different versions, but I think we support 200. There's 200 network vendors and tons of different versions of firmware. So, standardizing or abstracting away all of that, that's where we help. And yeah, that's Auvik in a nutshell. We'd love to chat with people if they're interested in trying to, drive that REM down. If you go check out our website, auvik.com/true5, you'll see the whole theme about not wearing pants. And Gary, you were at IT Nation. We had another guy at the show named Alex. Did you see him walking around with no pants?
I did. I saw him with no pants. Hilarious.
Yeah, it was kind of bold. But really, it's, again, your clients are expecting you're doing this. You don't want to be delivering that service reaction. You want to be proactive, not reactive, and that's where we help. So, yeah, to that extent,
Alex,
it's worth checking out.
Yeah, let me give it. So a lot of my top people, the high flyers that we work with, the ones that they're all using or they're evaluating Auvik right now. And here's the reason why. People often say, well, listen, how do I control reactive service? Well, here's one way, what kind of things you're doing with Auvik. And then what I'm saying is we have a dedicated role towards it. So you combine those things. And these are the kind of issues. Just think about it and how I've been running these businesses for 20 years, right? The kind of issue you just said where someone calls you up and something's slow, it's the one that goes to your highest resource. If you get a couple issues like that in a month that you burn up hours and hours and hours on, those handful of issues can throw your REM off by 20 or 30 or 40% right there, right? Because if our average ticket is under 30 minutes, which it is in my business, and you get one ticket that's 4 or 6 or 8 hours that because you don't have visibility or could have been avoided or you don't have the right information, like just a few anomalies, one anomaly a week can skew our numbers. We only manage a couple thousand users, so and only a few people on that support desk. So that just gives an example, right? So I wanted to just tie that back to our content today. And then finally, why people do business with True Methods. So we have our training program. We have 200 hours of role-based content on everything we're talking about today, from sales to profitability to service delivery. But we have My IT Process, and that is our framework where basically the two roles of technology alignment and VCIO live in this. So your centralized services person lives in Auvik and your RMM. Your project people and your support desk people, they live in your PSA, and this framework runs those. So this is how you deliver standards, alignment, impact, and strategy. And so our whole goal was around reducing that reactive noise, lowering that cost, increasing your value so you can create more sales separation. And once you do that, you're going to build recurring revenue. You're going to dramatically increase your profit margins. And if you're an owner, for all the risks that you take, you're going to be able to achieve a level of financial independence. So again, there's auvik.com /true5. And if we have some special pricing right now that we rolled over from IT Nation that we can tell you about with our package of training and My IT Process. And so send an email to gary.promo@truemethods.com. So there's no E in true. It's gary.promo@trumethods.com. And someone from my team will reach out, and they'll also go through that gut check with you about making sure you're accurate and figuring out what your cost per seat is today compared to what we gave you. So awesome. One question we had was, will the slide deck be available? So we're not going to send the slide deck out, but everybody who registered will get a link and you can rewatch the webinar again. So, so Alex, this was fun today.
It was. Love it.
And listen, and I just want to close by one, thanking you for you guys supporting getting this content into the marketplace. And just tell you, like over this past year, I've got a chance to work with your team. They've come to some of our peer group meetings, came to Schnizzfest, and just you guys are really awesome to work with. And I see this concept of your product really making an impact on the success of the people that we're working with, which is why I exist, right? To help people do it. And if you think about it, I think the timing is right because more stuff's going to be monitored by Auvik and less by the RMM over time, percentage wise, right? So more things are moving to the cloud and are impacted by everything else that's going on. So I feel like it's the right product at the right time. So I'm glad we get a chance to work together, my friend.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift afoot in our industry, and we're here to help the MSPs adapt and make sure they deliver an awesome client experience.
Hey, man, thanks for co-hosting today. Again, thanks to the entire Auvik team for your support, and I'm glad we got to bring this message out to the industry.
Thank you so much.
Make it a great day.